Okay, so as I said, my name is Mark Donkin. I'm one of the directors at SuccessFlow. We're running this session today on making content marketing your New Year's resolution. And basically, what we're looking at here is how to build a content framework. There's obviously companies now are producing a phenomenal amount of content. Our feeling is a lot of it at the moment is really just produced and pushed out randomly, with little thought to a framework and a strategy behind that. So we're going to try and look at how we would, with clients and for ourselves, look at that. In particular, also, a lot of what we do with clients is look at how in the more in the B2B space. So, how you're going to use content to drive business results in terms of sales and leads for sales as well. So what we're going to cover today. So we're going to look at how to create a content strategy and how to make that work. Also then overlaying that the personas in terms of how to start to build personas and build your content to talk and engage with your audience, and that's going to really interest your audience. What types of content you're going to need for lead generation, um, and how you're going to connect all that together. How to manage the content build and production process, the importance really of turning that into a timeline. So understanding the actual project timeline behind that and how that's going to hang together. What kind of software you're going to need to promote and manage the content process, and then how to build out nurture program off the back of that, and what kind of content we'd look to nurture those leads, if you like, and also how we're going to score that as well based on the type of content. So what I want to do is I've got some quite interesting stats and research that's been done that I wanted to share with you. The first slide here was done by the Content Marketing Institute and Marketing Profs, and it's looking at what are the kind of key goals you're going to try and drive. What are the marketing goals or business goals you want to try and drive from your content. So even though we had leads on there, really your content should be building your brand. It shouldn't be detriment to your brand. So what I mean, really, we don't want to be creating content that's overly salesy at the top of the funnel. You want it to be educational, interesting, thought-provoking, challenging, and really represents what your brand's about. Then, obviously, lead generation is a big part of that, and I suppose then nurturing those leads and acquiring customers through that, positioning you as a thought leadership, making your audience engaged, using content to engage, to communicate with your customers. It's a really good way of building up a loyalty and advocacy program. Getting your customers inputting into your content, getting them sharing your content. Driving website traffic as well, obviously, and driving sales. So the next one is really looking at then, which I found interesting, is what's the confidence gap in actually producing different formats of content. So, in-person events at the top, I think it's because historically there's been a lot of events and exhibitions and so on that have been done. So there's a quite high confidence there in running that. And similarly with case studies, YouTube's been around for a bit. So, producing those videos, webinars are coming on. But interestingly, down here, we start to see less confidence in blogs and newsletters, producing research and white papers and, really in-depth articles and content that are gonna work. And then how does that transpire over the last 12 months? So, in the last 12 months, what's the content marketplace happened? So I think everybody knows in marketing that there's been a lot more content, but this study showed that there was 32% of participants said they'd significantly produced a lot more content in the last 12 months and 41% more. So there's a big shift, in producing content. Perhaps there's a bit of too much of a shift in producing content that's not of a high quality. We speak to a lot of clients where their strategy is to outsource everything and they just provide them with lots and lots of content which they post up on their blog, which from us isn't the right way to go about that. It really needs to have your audience involved. You need to be involved in producing that content, absolutely, because you need to be the thought leaders, not an external provider. And also one of the main issues is that the overwhelming list of different content assets that you can produce and also the channels as well, the amount of channels you can produce that content for. So you've got all these different social channels, producing articles and blog posts, creating your email, creating your videos, your articles, your white papers, infographics, research, microsites, right down to looking at apps and so on. So there's a lot of options out there, but then having those options structured is key, that it works for your overall strategy. So before we get into the how-to part of this, let's take another quick poll here on what do you see as the main challenges to running that. So based on those, and see if it's in line with what we've just looked at. So, producing the right amount of variety of content, do you think you've got different variety? I mean, that's actually something we're looking at. We're now looking at a lot more documental video guides, video blog, really having that hang together. So, that's something that's challenging for us as well. The budget, do you have the kind of budget? I mean, you might look at companies that, for example, marketing automation vendors, and they have tons of content. Well, they've got very, very deep pockets. So again, having the right strategy that works to the kind of budget, getting buy-in, and then producing content that engages as well. Okay, so let's again, I'll share this so we can have a look at that. Interestingly, producing content that engages the audience, so on, is very high there, along with the kind of variety. And how does that look compared to the general market? So you again, 41% of this research showed that, and this was a couple of years ago, but similarly, even then, producing the kind of content that engages prospects, producing enough content, and the budget, so it's very, very in line with what we've just taken there, that poll we've just taken there. This slide I want to look at here is the personas. So this is a very simplistic view of this, but definitely want to start thinking about building out the content to the audience. So you're going to look at various things. What are the professional goals? What are the personal goals? What are the key challenges? Where do these people actually, where are your audience participating? And then starting to group them. So, in our case, we have various personas around marketing and sales, and then we build that into our segments. So what we then do is, once we understand that and we've got those built out, we can then start to group them in the database. So, for example, we might have various ones on different industries, geography, location, behavior, and their job role, and so on. And then we can start to bucket those in the database, within the marketing system and within the CRM. So when we actually come to run communication in them, and actually not just in CRM and marketing, but also in, for example, in LinkedIn. So we'll use those and start to segment LinkedIn down via the groups, via the connections that we have. So we know that when we run our campaigns, we can push out the content that's relevant to that audience. Now, when we come to produce that content, it's very important that we then have a good solid process in place. So we come up with the concept. We've got the concept of what we want to run, and then we're going to brief that into the creative team, and we're going to make sure that what we would do is make sure that we wireframe those content assets before we actually produce them, get them approved by the business, and then we'd build them out and create them, whether they're landing pages, guides, presentations, social copy, blog posts, whatever. That'll all become part of that brief. Little tip for you here, this system that we use, we really like. Part of our process is an online content production system. So your key stakeholders can collaborate, make comments that they don't like this, whatever, they want to change some copy, and make sure you get a final version. Everybody's involved in that process. That you go through version control, and you're not using Word and so on to do that. So you may well have seen similar graphics to this before. This is our kind of take on that. This is our general high-level framework of how we see everything hangs together. So at the top here, we've got the different stages that a buyer will go through. So at the early stages, they're looking, they're being made aware of an issue, a topic, an opportunity. So for example, today you might be at the awareness stage of, okay, we think we need to be, more strategic about our content marketing. We're going to go on this webinar. Okay, but I could have easily have done an ebook or a white paper. In fact, we're doing a guide on this topic as well. But we also want to have some supporting content. So we might want to have a series of blog posts that relate back to them. And what you'll find is, as you produce that brief, if you start to think in this way, you'll produce this all as one brief. So okay, we're going to have this webinar, but let's do a guide version of it. Let's do some blog posts on it. Oh, that would work as an infographic. Oh, why don't we turn that into a video afterwards as well? But that's all going to hang together as one program. And then we can use this freemium layer at this end to drive traffic to our site, which then turns into conversions up here. As people move further into the funnel, i.e. they register, we can then start to do follow-up. We might send them the video. We might then send them an option to take a presentation or a demonstration and hand that over to sales. Down here, though, there's a tremendous amount of content that's needed to support all of that. So, on social, you might need to have a whole series of discussion topics that relate to there. Posts on InMail, social InMail posts, tweets, emails. You could be looking at Google Plus, SlideShare. There's all kind of channels that we might want to support this program with. So we need to think about how we're going to produce all of that as well. So here's just some examples. I wanted to drop in some of the stuff we do. So over here, is an example of a guide. Keeping it very visual, and then you can see this. I mean, we worked with Lieber there, really understanding what's on that persona. This one was for plant managers. Now, all they think about, apparently, when we found out, was that is reducing their fuel costs. That's a big, big driver. Maybe not actually today. This was a couple of years ago, but so we produced a guide. How to, and we could actually get tangible figures. Fantastic. Over here with the Charities Aid Foundation, a webinar on how to 5 fundraising ideas. And we actually got over 700 people registered on these webinars. So, these really work, but you've got to think also about your landing pages and how you're going to get them optimized and how you're going to work in your social content and so on. Now, to actually capture turn that traffic into leads, there's a few little tips here I wanted to share with you. Firstly is you can see behind here is the landing page, and this is similar to what you'll have registered on today. Very, very, it's not part of the website. It is a landing page. You cannot navigate away from that. The call to actions are very, very clear. We have a thing called a 6-foot rule that you can actually step 6 foot away, click on one of those, and then you're into this form. Now, our recommendation, you really need to have this as a marketing automation form today, in our opinion. So this is actually a marketing automation form, and we're capturing the information that we need to be able to segment in the database. So, for example, important to us to understand what CRM you're on, perhaps what marketing automation you're on. But also we've got down here, we have a mobile version. You'll hear this all the time now. It's so important. I think 63% or something of all emails are read on mobile. So having all of that optimized for your email, for your landing pages and everything is very, very important. And then how we can work that into the blog. So here's an example of a blog post, the year of sponsored content, and then, we can have up the related webinars that relate to this. Now, if you've got the right content management system, behind this, you can have this all segmented out correctly. So, for example, we have ours as strategy, creative, marketing, automation, selling. So somebody reading this one fits into the marketing segment, and then under there we have various other sub-segments, content being one. So we know that because you're reading this blog post, that you're going to want to be presented with this related webinar or whatever it might be. Now, this is a very kind of simplistic look at how we hang all this together, but it's important that we don't just look at one piece of content, that we have a full schedule. So simplistic overall, this is looking at a year view. Up here, we've got the webinar. So let's say this webinar today that we're running, and we need to make sure we've got that landing page up as early actually as possible. The earlier we can get that landing page up and running, the better it is, because we can actually start to raise awareness of it, start to generate clicks to that page, start to optimize it. So we have that running for quite some time. We then can promote that through social. And in the social, we'll start to using those personas. So we might start early on, if you take this content one, it might be starting to talk, raise a discussion about content, the importance of strategic content, building awareness. But as we get closer to the event itself, it'll become much more promotional. Last chance to register for the webinar. Now, because it's a webinar, we then want to convert that into a landing. We don't just want to turn the landing page off either, because traffic will still keep coming. So turn it into a recording page where people can download the recording. Have a series of emails going out to promote the piece. But as that ends, what's the next piece? And it might be a guide running here, and then maybe another webinar, a white paper. But down here, we've got a consistent layer, the freemium layer. So on our blog, ideally, your blog will host everything there: your articles, your video, your infographics, your data sheets. All of that is freely accessible. But think about, somebody's looking at this infographic, we're going to redirect them up here to this one. And then you can have a stream of social commentary that's going out on these different topics as they come to keep your social commentary really rich. And why not, maybe have a monthly or quarterly insights or newsletter that does a roundup, so you can pull things in from up here that does a roundup of all of this content into one central piece, and have a really good template to do that. So this is looking at the social channels, this little video here. So this is a tool we use to manage all of that social activity through campaigns. So you can see these are posts going out. You can see the kind of schedule here. Look at how many different tweets, posts, discussions, group posts are going out. So there's a lot of channels we need to be managing, and you can't do that manually. And then we need to be listening to what's going on. So we need to have all of this commentary, anybody retweeting, commenting, we need to be able to deal with that. This is interesting though. Based on the keywords we want to set as well, we don't just want to be pushing out our own content. We want to be engaging with our influencers, our audience, and seeing what content they're posting out that relates to our discussions, and see if we can share it, we can comment on it, and we can start that dialogue going. It's a two-way street. And then the ability to report on all of this. And this is great as well, because you can really hook in your employees. You can start to also share your content with your employees, so you can have them posting that out and keep them building their brand and getting their audience involved as well on your content and on your discussion. This is great, because if you see here, you can see, okay, so we had 822 posts on this campaign, and we had 856 clicks, and we had 90 conversions. The conversion in this case would be a lead going back directly into the CRM and marketing, and then we could track that by channel: Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google+. So now we're looking at how we're going to take all of that lead conversion and use content then, but use it to now nurture. So this is where you can get more into that consideration type content or decision type content. So, somebody might have registered for our webinar. They're going to drop into a certain segment in the database. We then wait to see what happens. We then send them an email, and this might be, no, we're going to send them some videos that we know that should be interesting to them, because we know what segment they're in. We then can do a lookup. If they clicked on that, we might then want to set a task for one of our salespeople. In our case, what we would do here is not get them to call, is get them to connect. So they would connect on LinkedIn. Thanks for doing. I'm your contact at SuccessFlow, and then they might follow up with an email. We might then send them out another piece. But we could follow up however we want in that case, or we might just want them to follow up. They get the video, and we're going to do an introductory call to introduce ourselves, and then we might send them some other relevant information. All the time, though, is thinking about your segment. So is an opportunity here, and this is why the alignment between marketing and sales is so important, because if down here, when sales are on the phone, if they can be capturing good information, even though it might not convert right now, the conversation might go, really liked it, is interesting, but not right now. Okay, do you have a marketing automation platform? Do you have CRM? Whatever. So we know we can then start to hone down our segments, so we can then start to communicate to our audience at a much more personal level. It's going to really resonate with them. And then we want to overlay scoring on that. So again, this is a very simplistic view on that, but you may well all be familiar with scoring in terms of making sure that we're scoring on behavior, so certain key websites, key pages, content downloads, webinars, whatever it might be. And then, but also on the profile, so you might want to say, well, if they're a director level, I'm going to give them more score. So when we then prioritize the database, we can then, present that, prioritize that back in CRM. So we're now showing the hottest leads, if you like, and this is all, so 16 hours ago, we're generating, high scores and relevance there at the same time. Now, also very important that we know what's going on across this whole program. So it's okay. We're going to start what we think is the right way to go. We build out that strategy, but without having the right insights ongoing, how can you make decisions? So, if you take email, for example, on any channel, what posts are working best? If you look at which of our best performing posts, we know what's resonating with our audience, which are our best performing channels, especially on social, which groups are performing best, which profiles are performing best. On email, doing A/B testing, trying different headlines, different subjects, different email formats. What are our audience engaging with? Splitting that by segment. So we then know, it might be this segment that's targeted at senior contacts in finance. They really like white papers. They really like this format of email. They really like these types of posts. So have that insights layer, and then have that so you can get to it. So you can build that into CRM as dashboards, or have that. What we do is we would pull that together into a monthly review, and then come back in and do a rescope, reshape. This is an evolving process. It's not something that we want to stop and start. We want to keep growing that. And then looking at from the business side, the sales side, every stage, how is that converting through the funnel, and being able to split test that. I put this one in. I really like this. Quite interesting. It's a bit of Americanized, but it was by the Content Marketing Institute. So it's really showing the various stages of content marketing. So you're pushing that content out there, you're getting visitors to that content, you're turning that content into leads, you're then nurturing through that process to generate opportunities and ultimately sales. Now, is that the end of the journey? No, absolutely not. This is showing, that's the halfway. You're halfway to the touchline. You then need to then make sure that your customer's satisfied. So thinking about that goal, the content, getting customer satisfaction, sharing that, making sure you're retaining that customer, but getting your customers involved and turning those customers into evangelists or advocates is where you want to be. So just to summarize here, a couple of things I want to kind of share with you. When you're thinking about your strategy, think about the team you're going to pull together, the stakeholders. So you might have your partners involved, your agency, content, PR agency, but you definitely internally, you've got the knowledge. So, bring in sales. Sales are great because salespeople are speaking to the customers every day. They know they're qualifying what they're doing, asking questions, qualifying, and that's what we're trying to do with the content as well. So, get the right team together that can help shape the content strategy. Not too many though, where it becomes too many cooks, if you like, and you never get anything decided. Keep the long-term view in sight. It's all right. You've got to have focus. So what we'd do is we'd look at, right, this is probably our 12-month plan as it stands today, but here's our 3-month tactical program we can execute on. 3 months later, insights, review, make decisions, evolve, and then shift that on another 12 months. Definitely need technology to manage all of this. Impossible, totally impossible to do that without the right platforms. Unfortunately, in our experience, there isn't one fit all. So, you need a good CRM at the core of this. In our experience, it's generally Salesforce or Dynamics, the lot that we work with. You need a good marketing automation platform around that. And when I talk about marketing automation, I'm talking about a good marketing platform that will manage the email automation, scoring, nurturing, tracking. And then really, in our experience, you need a proper social platform around that, that can manage the distribution, the listening, the curation of that content. You probably need a good web, you definitely need a good CMS to host all of your content on, and have that well structured, but then also thinking about hooking a good SEO tool into there so you can analyze and optimize your content. Always be testing, so keep testing different posts, but only if you're monitoring and analyzing that. And think about, a multi-channel, multi-format approach. So, right, we want to do a webinar, but we want to turn that into a guide. We're then going to have a video. But then we need to create. We know our audience are on LinkedIn groups. We know they're on LinkedIn company page. We know we can get them for our employees. We know we can get to Twitter. We want to have our website. So thinking about all those different channels you're going to be producing for, and then think about the journey. Think about it from the customer's point of view or your audience's point of view. From that first click, where do they go next? They click on a blog, where are we going to take them next? They register for a webinar, where do we take them next? What landing page do they go to? Think about that process, and walk it through yourself. Go and do it, test it. I just wanted to touch upon here quickly about our process before we end, just about what we do. So you'll go on our website, you'll see strategy, creative, marketing, automation, and selling. We offer a complimentary workshop at the moment. So if you'd be interested, let us know, where we can come along and talk about some of these areas: channel, process segmentation, content framework, nurturing, building a schedule, scope and plan. And then into the creative, how we produce all that content assets, marketing, how we can build your network, social, paid, email, and then nurture and run trigger campaigns, scoring, web tracking, so on. And then aligning all that back into sales, integrating all of that into CRM, building out, sales dashboards, social insights, social selling. And there's some of the platforms that we work with to generate that. Now, I'm going to ask, there might be some questions we've got now. I'd really like it if you'd go and follow us on Twitter. Go to our Twitter account. It's SuccessFlow Limited. Also, go to our company page, please. You can just go on there and just follow us on then. And then, when in LinkedIn, if you ever use LinkedIn, we always share some good content or the content that we're producing.